Okay, so this is a deck on a Queenslander. This deck goes right around the house, right along. To bring this back, you've got to hand sand all those edges underneath the rails there with a sander, disc sander, and all those edges you've got to bring out from the wall. Prior to that, you've got to bang all those nails in, so punch all the nails, got to be done. And then you use a floor sander with about P40 grit on it to get most of it. Now see, you're never going to get it all because it's all uneven and up down and sideways, and so you're really only going to get a good part of it, and the rest of it's got to be done by your hand sander. So we've gone over this. We've actually had to, because of the design of the floor sander, you've got to go from the middle to the edge and then turn it round and go from the middle to the edge again, and that means you get this sort of this bit in the middle here. All those little grooves in the middle, those have got to be sanded out, and then from there on we've got to go over it with a hand sander. Now the hand sander that I use is you can pick these up at the hardware store for about $100. Now it's really it's a car polisher. It's a car polisher with a Velcro. You can put 180mm discs on these, and 40 grit again is what you want, P40, and use that to sand down the rest of this deck. It's going to take a while. So that's actually a polisher, but it works really well as a sander, and it has an adjustable speed on it here. It goes up to 6. I normally leave it on 6. So if you're polishing a car, of course, with a polishing pad on, you'd probably take that speed down a bit. So this is a Queenslander. I've actually painted this and it took a couple of months. So the decks go all the way down there, all the way along there, and right down the back. So this is going to be a big job now. I've got to put my knee pads on now. I've got to work my way board by board and get this sanded. It's unusual to actually have the boards going out from the house. Normally they go sideways. They go horizontal to the house. But this builder's chosen to do it this way. So I've got to go right around all these decks, and I'll show the clip when I finish it. Once I've done all that, I'm going to have to wash the whole house down because it's covered in cobwebs. You wouldn't think 8 years ago I painted this. It was a big job. I'll wash the house down, then I'm going to acid wash with oxalic acid all the boards here, wash it all off, hose it all off, let it dry, and then we're going to use an intergrain product. It's deck oil, probably with a Merbo tint in it, and that Merbo tint will actually bring all the grain and that together, and all the differences will all be tidied up with a Merbo. So that's about it this far, and she's a biggie. It's a big job. We're going to get 3 coats of sealer on this, probably. It's an oil-based sealer, and it's probably going to take about 30 or 40 litres to get around here. Massive house, awesome. Right, so we're going to get down on our knees, and you've got to have knee pads. So I've got these ball and knee pads on. I don't know if you can see them, but there they are there. Definitely need those. You need those because you'll end up with sore knees. I've probably got about 200 metres of decking here that needs to be sanded back. So I'm using these, this is the polisher sander. These are on special actually at our hardware for about 65 bucks. It's a good buy, good bargain. So they have a Velcro pad on it. Just sits on like that. Once we get cracking on this deck, what I've got to do is try and get all the grey off it. So that's all that grey down there. It's got to be sanded off. Now the other thing I use is the dust mask. You got to have a dust mask on because you don't know what this dust man gets into your lungs, and you'll be coughing and sneezing all night. And the other thing I use are these earplugs here. Now you can change the little yellow thing on these when they get a bit dirty, but definitely need those as well. Makes the job easier, and you don't end up with a ringing in your ears at night time when you're trying to get to sleep from working on power tools. So that's what you do. Now I've got a long way to go, so I'll clip it off here and we'll come back later. Hold on. Okay, so the hammer and nail puncher to use is you need a heavy dude like this. You need plenty of clout, and you need a solid floor punch like that. This one's been curled over. That's what happens after you use them for a while. This has done a few nails. So that's about a 5mm. That's a 5mm end on that, and a big heavy tool like this. Right, the other thing that's handy to have is this one here, a little blower. This one runs on battery. I always have one battery being charged up, while this one, because they don't last that long, while this one gets worn out, and then I just swap them over on the job. And I need to blow out all the dust from that sanding job over there. So if you have a look at that work I've just done there, sanded that bit there, and I'm going to blow it out now, just blow the dust away. Just like that. So you don't have to get perfect, especially when you've got a stain happening, because this stain actually shows the grain. So as long as it's sort of consistent all the way through and smooth. So that's what we're doing there. So if you have a look at that, I'm going to get the rest of it done, but you take the black, take the grey off, and just get a consistent colour. Don't worry about any marks or whatever, you know, that's all part of the look, and it all gets evened out with your stain.
In your eyes, let me take it out in the nicest, most friendliest way.
Okay, so we've sanded all this back. This has all been done with that car polisher sander. It's all sanded back, ready to acid wash with oxalic acid. So she's all been ready to go. So the oxalic acid wash actually brings up the colour, cleans the wood. You give it a good scrub and then you wash it off, and then you let it dry, and that prepares it for the sealer that we're putting on, which is an oil based. This has had oil based on it before, so I don't want to put water based on it. I just want to put an oil based product on. Intergrain has oil based and water based. So this is an oil based wash up with turpentine deck oil that's going on here, Intergrain product, and we're going to use Merbo, so it'll even off all the colour. And even though we've got some black here and there and a bit of grey, most of the grey is gone. It's consistent all the way through, so it'll add quite a nice pattern. So we've got a mix here of oxalic acid. It's actually called Reviver. That's the Intergrain product. It comes in 4 and 10 litres. Well, you need at least 10 litres on this, what we're doing at the moment. So that actually cleans the wood. You mix it up 1 to 4. It's one part Reviver and 4 parts water. And then we use a broom, preferably one with a few bristles. This one's a bit soft, but I've left my other one behind. And then what we've got to do is I've wet all that deck down, so that deck is wet. And you do it in parts. This is about 150 metres of deck, so I'm just going to do this part and around the front first while it's wet. And you scrub it with this Reviver, and that actually cleans up the wood, and it brings the colour back in the wood. And you leave it on for about 10 minutes, 10 to 15, and then you wash it off again. What I'm going to do is wash the whole house actually. Needs a good clean and get rid of all the cobwebs, and I'm going to use this water blaster over here, which is a petrol jobby. That's a petrol jobby, and I'll get that fired up, and I'll put the acid on first, do it bit by bit, then I'll leave it for 15 and wash it off with this, and I'll clean the whole house as well, all the walls, and make it look nice. So this is one coat, 300 square metres of decking. The house has been washed down, so all the walls are nice and shiny. All guttering, rafters have been done. Now this has all been brushed by hand, and the reason I did that is because if you use a sheepskin mitt or an applicator, you lose a lot of your oil down those holes, down the cracks, and that's a waste of oil, so I brush it all on. And you get in more cracks than that with the brush, and you can actually keep it wet as you go, and you don't waste so much product. So that's the stuff there, timber oil. That's the timber oil into grain. 2 coats I'm going to put on this. So 40 litres for 300 square metres we're using. I reckon I'd be using a lot more than that if I was using a sheepskin applicator. So yeah, much of a muchness I think at the end of the day. You know, there's time involved, but I'm pretty fast with the brush, so you get a big 100mm brush and just go for it. All looking nice and shiny, look at that. Oh nice, right around the front, round the corner, down the back, 300 square metres. Right, with this oil-based integrated product, deck oil, the first coat you put on wet so that it soaks in, and when you put in your second coat on, you spread it out a bit more. This is the second coat going on now, and the reason you spread it out is because it can go sticky if it sits there too wet and sits on top. And generally what you do is, after you spread it out, if there's any bits that are looking a little bit wet, you wipe them over with a cloth so that it doesn't sit on the top and become sticky. You do 2 boards at a time generally, because you don't want any joins happening with your stain, because your stain, you can end up with stop starts and joins. And you have a little cloth with you, because then you can wipe up any of the stain that goes onto the woodwork, because this stuff can splatter. It's splattery stuff, especially if it's windy. You really can't use it if it's too windy, because what happens is it splatters on your paintwork. So that's just a couple of hints when using. So in Australia, that stain's called merbau, which is actually a wood that you can get over here. It's a dark or browny coloured wood. So you can see the difference between the first coat on the left and the second coat going on the right. So it darkens it up and it evens up all the shades, brings all the colour together. And I prefer to brush it. Some painters might disagree. It takes longer, of course, but I think you get your paint in better into the wood, and you don't lose so much of the deck oil down those cracks, which happens when you're using a sheepskin applicator. It just disappears down the cracks there. So, you know, cost wise, it's much of a muchness. I think 300 square metres of deck that I've got, that I'm doing at the moment by hand, and that was by hand all the way through, even hand sanded all of that. I've used a floor sander for a couple of days, but you only get the edges on a deck. You can't get all the concave because of all the different levels of the wood, so you end up having to hand sand the whole lot. So I hand sanded the whole lot. I punched all the nails in, and there's hundreds of nails, hundreds of them. 300 square meters, you're probably looking between $15 and $18 a square meter to do this type of thing. And of course that depends on how much of the deck oil and sandpaper pads and that you're actually using. But that's about what it's going to cost to finish this deck. You're probably looking at about $5,000 all up to do 300 square meters, maybe a bit more depending on how much extra oil based intergrain. The intergrain product's not cheap, but it's one of the best on the market. The deck oil being terps based, I reckon spreads better. And I also reckon that when you come to actually touch it up after a couple of years with the sun on it, the goes are starting to go a bit grey on the edges. When you touch it up, it soaks in, whereas some of the other stuff out there, it sits on the top, and you keep building up a thicker and thicker layer of your product on top of the wood, as opposed to having it soak into the wood itself. So I think it's a lot easier actually to reapply and to maintain your decks. And if you're putting an investment in on your decks, you definitely need to look after it. It's no good just putting it on and leaving it and forgetting it, because it looks horrible after a few years when the sun gets at it and you start having the stuff go grey on you. Okay, so make sure you get your painter back after a couple of years and get him to put another coat or two on. Okay, so here's the final product. 2 coats. 2 coats of intergrain deck oil. Oil paste, Merbo tint. See how all the boards are bored in. The colour variations are all evened out. Well, that's what you do. That's how it's done. Awesome. Now that's going to last. That's going to last for a long time, even out here in direct sun. It's got to be checked every year. When it starts to go grey on the edges, that's when you put another coat on. And the good thing about this stuff is that it soaks in. It doesn't just put another layer on top. So you get impervious, you get UV resistance, and wearability, hard wearability. That's what we got. So this place is it's about 9 years old now, been renovated. I was here originally doing the paint job on this. I did the inside and the outside. Karana, Dalby, Queensland. Over 100 years old, this house, in restored condition. Awesome. Awesome. Done in Dulux lime white with the green and the red.